you. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thank KBW for inviting me. And yeah, I want to talk about where artificial intelligence meets blockchain and Web3 more broadly, and how we deal with opportunities and challenges. So about me, I'm actually originally from AI background. I've worked on machine learning and AI for about 10 years. I worked at Google Research, leading a team to understand natural language, worked on TensorFlow, and I was one of the co-authors of a paper that has pretty much kickstarted the current kind of trend in AI, which is called attention is all you need, and kind of introduced the technology called transformers. After that, I have founded Near, which originally was an AI startup. We were actually teaching machines to code and really trying to bring a novel way to interact with computing, where everybody can become pretty much a software engineer and really program their computing. Now, it was a bit too early for this, 5 years early, to be clear. And one of the things that we ended up doing is we built a crowdsourcing platform. And we saw a need for an effective payment system that works on a global scale. And this is where kind of our journey in Web3 started. And we figured out that there's an opportunity to build something in blockchain space, and started Near Protocol in 2018. Now, Near Protocol has started with this broad vision that we really want to bring open web, right? Ability for everyone to own their assets, data, and have power of governance. And kind of since then, been really bringing this vision forward in a way, what we call now blockchain operating system, that really propels and unites in much omni-chain way as well, open web. But I'll let Marieke to talk about that. Instead, I will dive in a little bit closer into how AI is structured right now and how does this fit the current trend. So one of the things that to know about AI is kind of this dichotomy of open and closed source, right? There's a number of big companies that are working on so-called closed source AI, although they're publishing papers and kind of providing some of the research they're doing. You cannot run the results of this yourself. You need to use their own servers. The architectures are known, right? But the kind of weights, the training that they've done is not. And it takes an immense amount of compute to reproduce it. Now, the reality is that open source, like from my perspective, always wins. Because, and this, the reason why Web3, I think, is eventually going to overcome Web2, is because the sheer amount of people and experimentation and incentives that's happening in open source is always dominating. And what we see now is Facebook open sourcing Llama and kind of really starting to match a lot of the capabilities OpenAI has is proving that. So what are the core pillars of any artificial intelligence system, right? There are 3 core pillars. One of them is data. So there's so-called large pre-training data. This is what GPT stands for, as well as specific problems that you're trying to solve, and you need data to fine-tune your model. You have model architecture and weights that you kind of produce as a result of it, and you have kind of amount of compute, right, GPUs or accelerators that you need to train and run this model. So these are the 3 core pillars, and they are interestingly intertwined with Web3. The other thing to know about AI, right? So this large language models is not a new thing. It's been around for like 30, 40 years, but they've made huge major strides in the last 5 years as kind of this transformers technology has scaled up. Open source and kind of research community is also really quickly evolving, right? So kind of the methods of reducing amount of compute needed, reducing the way and being able to do work on local machines has extreme motivation, right? Because there's a lot of people who have a single machine and not a lot of people who have access to Google clusters. And finally, there's a lot of kind of thin companies that have popped up, which were like, hey, we're going to use OpenAI API, and we're going to do our own thing on top of it and kind of provide you a API on this, and they had a really cool tweets. They had like tons of views, but they have high churn because they don't really provide anything new. And the underlying models that are continue innovating really disrupt them right away. We also have kind of an interesting change that happened, right? So before, if there's some program on the computer, right, there's always a human that interprets the result. There's a human who are entering the kind of inputs and interprets results. And so for the first time, this language-based models is where computing is now able to interact with society directly, right? It's not anymore the need for a human to be the interpreter. You have a direct kind of language output, and which means it can interact not just with individual humans, but also with kind of society services. It can interact with legal system, with political system, with communication, right? It can run for an office, potentially. And this kind of creates a lot of ripple effects in our society, which we are definitely not ready for. It also can have, as any technology, positive and negative effects, right? It has a lot of promise to help people and solve our problems, to provide more personalized tutoring for children, as well as better research assistance. And at the same time, it can have massive negative effects around misinformation and misuse in malicious ways. And Web3 is really here to help structure the positive ways and mitigate the negative. And I'll give you an example how that works. And I think the important part from my perspective is that the traditional regulations are not equipped to really kind of contain this technology. Similarly to what we've seen in Web3, where both the technology evolution, the amount of composability, the amount of new things you can come up with, right, is just so much faster than the regulations can move. And so we really need a more kind of software-based and practical approaches to really kind of structure this. So why now, right? Why is this intersection is important now? Well, AI has made amazing strides. There's hardware improvements over the past 5 years, effective models, kind of research, as well as we have this ChatGPT with a product market fit of 100 million users. We also have Web3 now, which has matured, right? We have now kind of scalable technologies. We have like effective transparency and reputation. We have like effective markets been built around this that have enough on-ramps and off-ramps. And there's a lot of kind of common things that around like crowdsourcing and content management that are becoming more and more important in intersection of both. And governance is one of them. So a very specific example, right, is because the society works with language, the kind of all the interactions with financial institutions, with political, et cetera, now can be affected. And they can be exploited by a malicious actor, a human, who can actually use these tools to, at scale, affect it. And so the way to address this is actually to use cryptography, right? Notice I didn't say blockchain yet. We need to use cryptography to authenticate a specific piece of content, the traceability, where data came from, who signed this. Now, if you just do that on itself, it doesn't actually give you the understanding who has done it, because anybody can sign anything with something. Like, you need a way to build a reputation around a specific identity, and this is where blockchain comes in. Blockchain is an effective tool to build reputations, and we now have social protocols actually to power that. We have Near Social, we have Lens, and a few others who are really powering that. Community governance, right? We've been having experiments with DAOs, but it's really important now to have a diverse inputs around how do we kind of judge and evaluate the models that they are actually safe and aligned with our values, right? We need to curate training data and evaluation data for these models in such a way that is not biased by a single point of view or by a small group of people. And so we need a large community input to actually have this established. We need to define and kind of oversee agents and fund research. So I'll talk about specific example because I think the AI, Web3, and people need to work together in one to solve really global problems that humanity is facing. So right now, AI is seen by some as a very kind of dystopian future, right? Be that destroying Hollywood with generated content or kind of replacing everybody's job. And the reality is AI is good at some things. Humans are good at others. AI is really good at consuming large amounts of information, being able to summarize it. It's good at pretty much kind of evaluating large amounts of possibilities and figuring out what's the best given the specific criteria. The blockchains are really good at coordinating people, making sure everybody is voting, creating transparency, as well as creating financial system around that. And people are good at deep holistic expertise, creativity, and making decisions. So let's look at a specific example where we combine all of this and to solve one of the kind of bigger challenges humanity faces, solving cancer. This requires coordination of large number of people around the world. It has massive amounts of budget that currently is not transparent how it's used, and it kind of requires a ton of management across the whole industry. So let's start a Cure Cancer DAO, right? This will be a DAO of experts and institutions, hospitals that come together to really address this problem. And so they will share this mission of curing cancer. They specify kind of a small group of experts who will be running it. And finally, they'll initiate a DAO where the CEO of the DAO, the operator, the manager, the coordinator, is an AI agent. And so this governance board sets up the mission, the KPIs around how we're measuring success, as well as procuring and helping with raising budget for this. And the task for the AI agent now is to start recruiting the researchers and people, research institutions to participate in it, as well as to come up with a step-by-step plan and sub-projects which are going to be moving us in that direction. As new institutions are joining, such AI is onboarding them, providing them context, is able to summarize all the other work that has been done or in progress in the ecosystem and make sure that they're on their task and kind of in the specific lane and not blocked by anybody else. Now, the board, this kind of the community of researchers that are established as DAO and potentially new ones who join are able to oversee and override if they think that AI is doing the wrong job. It also, interestingly and differently from people, can provide specific examples where AI is doing job wrong and in a way have procured training data for this AI to adjust behavior, right? So we can use the very effective way of pretty much coaching this AI, right, through training data to make different decisions or make different kind of suggestions by procuring training data and giving examples, right? And you can use experts in management or you can use experts in specific domain expertise to really get this data. You have this agent that is now able to update roadmaps, keep everything up to date, able to generate what is the current state of the research, provide like daily, weekly, monthly updates to all the stakeholders, as well as very specific context to the people who are working. And over time, it can expand, right? It can even spawn new sub-DAOs, which are also run by independent AIs, where they have a specific subtask, for example, curing a specific type of cancer, where maybe a different type of research is needed. It can coordinate the treasury and the funds of this DAO by pretty much being the actor that creates proposals, and they can be validated by the community. And so the board is really there to oversee and kind of really work in the regular, how we see boards and communities overseeing the execution of regular organizations. But they are really have an active part now to be able to coach, as well as they're able to participate in the discussions. So this vision is not possible without bringing Web3 and AI together, right? You're not able to do things like this with just an AI running on a centralized server because they're not able to participate in the economy. They're not able to pay people, they're not able to do this. You need the accountability and transparency of every action to be able to then not just audit, but also give feedback and have a right feedback loop. The kind of streamlining that comes from this AI is really the way to start coordinating, right? In Web3, we had a very kind of crisis of DAOs that happened because although in the beginning people were really excited about coordinating DAOs, what happened over time is that it's a really hard work. There's a lot of kind of people, and all of them are stakeholders, and all of them needs to be onboarded, given context, produced content, and coordinated. And it's a really hard job that people were actually not paid much to do. And so leveraging the kind of the benefits that we already see from summarization and ability to kind of create content tailored for specific people, we can now use this to kind of enhance coordination in these decentralized organizations. And finally, we can monitor and kind of create risk frameworks around this because, again, everything is transparent. You know exactly the models used. You know and how to evaluate the risks of this. And this is just a high-level example, right, of how a very specific, kind of use case can be put together using these technologies and really starting to benefit something that's bigger than just, AI research or Web3 kind of our own small pond, but actually making effect on the real world. And I think this is what we all should be striving for, actually getting out of just our somewhat, sometimes circular economy and really starting to think, how do we affect the change in the world that we're having around us? So just to kind of mention some of the things that are already in progress, right? So I mentioned, 3 core pillars, data being one of the core pillars, and blockchain is an extremely powerful place to create marketplaces. And so data, kind of crowdsourcing and marketplace is one of the kind of biggest needs right now, because although there's a lot of pre-training data that's available, a specific problem sets, right? Everything from, how do you answer to this question to, is this sentiment positive or negative, is something that everybody's looking for. And so creating a marketplace where everybody in the world can participate in doing tasks and anybody can actually procure data is extremely important. And it also allows over time to have this on-chain agents to actually participate in this economy as well. Now, looking forward a little bit further, we'll have more specialists, right? So it's not just anybody participating, but as you are doing work, you actually proving out that you have skills in specific domain. And now you can have this marketplace which are more specialist. And the interesting thing here, it doesn't matter if on the other side there's an AI or a human doing the work, right? The marketplace on the kind of in blockchain actually removes that kind of divergence and now creates kind of a singular future work where you can like, hey, I need this creative written, and maybe it's written by AI or blockchain. If you have a way to kind of qualify it or there's other people verify the quality. Finally, I mentioned kind of this on-chain agent DAO coordination, and I think this is one of the kind of big use cases that we'll see, like right now will be more as a experiments, but as it matures, it will become more and more dominant as a way to coordinate and govern both blockchain projects, but as well as more real-world projects. And so there's few kind of companies are starting to work on this. Finally, there's a lot of opportunity, right? Kind of moving away from the centralized services like OpenAI, Midjourney, et cetera, and actually moving the generation on edge, right? Be that on your phone, on your device, on your TV, allowing actually hyper-personalization, right? It can know exactly what videos you watched before or what communications you have and create content and create videos and images just for you. And so that requires smaller models on edge as well as a kind of ways to potentially decentralize some of the computation. You have fan-owned IP, right? So this is more a Web3 part where the IP itself probably is going to be generated, right? So it's user content generation, but then you have brands and styles that are created by either individuals or teams, and then can be owned by different people, and they receive the part of revenue from the generated content. And so all of that really like is infrastructure to tie together all of these disparate pieces and disparate participants in the ecosystem. Finally, the kind of decentralized science, so-called research funding, beyond just investing in a bunch of startups, which potentially don't make a bunch of revenue, but creating a really interesting technology, there's a new way of venture where we're funding research and really allowing to capture value from the open source technology, right? And blockchain and kind of tokenization is one of the ways to do that. So this is just a QR code to sign up for Near tasks for the AI crowdsourcing. And this is just an example of a project we're doing. And yeah, I'm going to pass this to Marieke. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Illia. We're going to stay on topic, but go and talk more about the open web in general. So all the way from Switzerland, the CEO of the Near Foundation, Marieke Flament, is going to talk to us about how the open web is near. Big round of applause. Thank you very much.
Hello, Korea, great to be here. And building on Illia's perspective on AI and Web3 and how things interface, what I want to talk about today is an open web, why we need an open web, and actually how we think about an open web and what we're doing about it at Near. When we look around the world today, we're living through several crises. We are living through a climate crisis. We are living through divisions of our society, the left, the right. We also just have been through, or is it even finished, coronavirus. And who knows, Illia was mentioning, having to treat some of the largest diseases in the world, but who knows what's coming next. And not only that, but I don't know how you feel every day when you wake up in the morning and your phone is basically shouting at you with like thousands of messages in all directions, just trying to grab for your attention. The fundamental problems we actually have make it really sound like it's bad news everywhere. And actually, guess what? The reality is that bad news is good for clicking, because if you click, it will generate more revenue. And so we're constantly fueled into this machine of clicks and bad news, and which also divides us much more fundamentally as a society. One of the problems of the way the current web system is built is that actually the centralized web as we know it is all about profit. It is not about people. And what's happening with that is that it's actually causing breakdown, and therefore all the crises that we're having. I'm, of course, exaggerating, but the reality is, if you think of the machine and the cycle we currently are in, that's what's happening. That's why we need an open web. And so what is an open web? Well, an open web fundamentally flips that definition of central parties and basically milking and using each and every one of you with your clicks for your data, but actually giving that back to you. It is actually having to build a web that is without the influence of large corporations or gatekeepers, and that gives everybody everywhere in the world an equal chance to participate and ownership of your data, your ideas, your efforts. And that's what we are building at Near. That's what we believe in. How can we build this open web a better web? So what is Near? You heard from Illia, our co-founder, on the origin of Near, and Near actually started as an AI project. And because there was a fundamental problem in actually solving and having ability to actually tackle and have thousands of people around the world being fairly rewarded for the work that they were doing, there was a need to create a better layer one. And that's how Near evolved then into a very powerful, very simple, scalable, secure, and sustainable layer one. More recently, we've continued our journey on the stack and the entirety of the technology that is being built across the Near ecosystem, and we've evolved into a blockchain operating system. But our mission remains fundamentally the same. It is about getting 1 billion users into this open web. I mentioned that, but at the core and fundamental principle of Near, when we've been actually started, was how can we have something that is so simple for developers to be able to develop with whatever language they know, so simple for users to actually use, because that's how we break down real entry to barriers. It's like having things that are extremely simple to enter into. Security, scalability, of course, are fundamentals that are needed as you think of bringing billions of users on chain. And last but not least, if we are engaging on this journey of leveraging technology to build the next future, well, it better be a sustainable future, a better future that thinks not only about sustainability in terms of ecology, but also participation and inclusion. NEAR has evolved and continues evolving into what we call a blockchain operating system. And so part of this blockchain operating system is actually all the different components that over time we've been able to actually see being built on NEAR. And for example, FastOS is one way to log in seamlessly and be onboarded into NEAR, but also other layer 2, and layer 1 ecosystems. Now, at NEAR Foundation, our mission fundamentally and first and foremost remains on building this open web and enabling an ecosystem of participants to be self-sustainable and over time reach the goal of what the open web can be. And ultimately, onboarding 1 billion users. Where are we at on our journey? Well, so far, 29 million wallets have been created, and we are at 2.1 monthly active accounts. You can see on the right-hand side that there is a huge stick coming up, and I'll talk more about that. Now, the next part of the presentation and what I want to talk about is actually, well, how do we do that? How are we strategically thinking of building this open web and having all the pieces coming together? The first thing I want to mention is actually long-term view is very important. This is not about creating FUD or FOMO. This is about building real, active, engaged users that will truly participate in the vision that we have for this open web. We spend a lot of time thinking about, well, if the value economic model for the web as we know it is broken, then what is the value economic model for Web3? How does it work? And the reality is that it is very complex. It interfaces many different participants and many different pillars. But fundamentally, what it does is that it accrues value back into open source technology. And fundamentally also what it does is that it actually incentivizes the participants, and it rewards the participant of that economical model to be engaged in the model, to truly get ownership of what they're creating or what actually they're engaging with. If you want to learn more about that, we actually published our Q2 transparency report, and we went through actually the details of how we think about this model and how it actually helps inform our entire strategy. So that's the first part, like what's actually the model and how does incentive and the mechanic of the machine flows. The second part is, well, it's great if you want to have 1 billion users, but how are you actually going to do that? And our fundamental belief is that this needs to be a two-pronged approach. You need to actually bring Web 2 into Web 3. I think if any one of us standing here think that we can build Web 3 purely just from the ground up, it's not going to happen. The reality is that today you have billions of users who are in Web 2. And to get to billions of users in Web 3 and in an open web, well, this will only happen if actually Web 2 gets onto the journey. And that's what we do with our strategic partnership, and I'll showcase to you some of the use cases that we've been doing. But equally, that's not enough, because if we only leverage Web 2 companies and try to onboard them into Web 3, we are going to miss out on actually the truly grassroots opportunity and the innovation that is creating things that we don't know yet about. And so that's why our approach is two-pronged. It's thinking about what is top-down, but also how can we empower grassroots community. So strategic partnership. What do we do and how do we do that? Today, we are actually, recently, over the last few days, we started seeing coming online on mainnet, that's the spike that you saw on my previous slide, a platform that is called KaiKai. And KaiKai is actually a loyalty program based out of Singapore that had a fundamental business problem, which was that for their loyalty program to actually be beneficial and to have a real viability in the business model, if they were using systems such as Stripe or existing financial rails, where the entire economic model was falling apart. And so this is a business that has hundreds, thousands, and millions of users that had a true business needs to actually onboard its users into Web3 and really use the rail of Web3. Not only that, but Kaikai is also soon launching a new product, which is called Kaikai Now, which is something that you'll be able to find on your lock screen and creating, therefore, a loyalty program. This is an example of a Web2 startup that started as a Web2 that has strategic impediments and problems that can only be solved by Web3. And so for us, in our view, this is a perfect use case of actually onboarding onto Web3 millions of users. A second use case for which we are actually known, and if you haven't downloaded the app yet, I encourage you to do so, it's Sweatcoin. With Sweat, the idea is that you walk and you earn. But not only that, you earn and you get onboarded into Web3. And now you can actually truly participate into Web3 and start having a taste of, well, what is your effort actually really worth? And actually, how can you engage into other platforms and start, making maybe different experiences out of that? Sweat has over 120 million users around the world and is still looking at launching more and more markets and opening up underneath, leveraging the Near platform. Play Amber, and in particular when we talk about gaming, is a very interesting game. In gaming, there is a lot of different possible angle of attacks for, let's say, Web3. And the reality is that gaming fundamentally transformed the web as we know it. Gaming is what pushed forward mobile web. And there is no reason not to believe that actually gaming is not going to be the next generation of what will actually enable us to create the next Web3. Now, the reality is we still haven't found what is that magic recipe. And so our approach to gaming is multifold. One is actually to think through casual games like Play Amber, who have millions of users. How can casual games actually start onboarding millions of people into crypto? But we also have other approaches with more traditional Web2 studio and also indie games in thinking through, well, how can actually gaming help reinvent and the next phase and enable the next phase of Web3? SailGP is a strategic partnership that we've done. So SailGP is about sailing. It is actually, it's been built by Larry Ellison, which is a founder of Oracle. And the spirit of SailGP is, well, we live in a world that needs to be sustainable. So maybe there is an alternative to Formula One, and maybe that alternative can be on water, and it can actually be powered by wind. More even, and more than that, the teams that are on every boat are also diverse teams. So it's not just about an only male team, but it's actually about also diversity and having different representations. SailGP approached Near to work on their next generation loyalty program. And how can we actually embark on a journey where fans truly own a team? And so that's what we have today, which is true partnership, but also like a DAO which owns a sports team, which is actually a professional sports team. We are in Korea, and our Korean team is doing a phenomenal job at actually working with some of the largest players that are in the market. And here I wanted to give two examples that we announced recently, talking again about gaming. One is Marble X, and the other one is Vortex Gaming. So that's our strategic partnership, right? Thinking about how can we onboard the next generation and the users that are in with to thinking and leveraging actually the usability and the simplicity of Near technology. But as I mentioned, that is not enough. And so one of the efforts that we consciously make is community. How can we engage our community to continue building what Near needs to have as a technology to enable the open web vision? How can we actually have the community to self-govern itself so that ultimately the foundation is not needed? Two efforts we're doing on that front. One is a DAO called Near Dev. On Near Dev, there is actually working groups that are continuously having open up discussions, but also creating the next generation of components that are needed to evolve the Near stack. For developers out there, I highly encourage you to have a look at that. We've recently seen in our community something that is probably one of the largest social experiments into Web3. And that is called the Near Digital Community. And ultimately what this is doing is, first and foremost, we have a trust, an instrument, and a treasury that is self-governed by entirely the community. And the community is organized around 3 different houses. As I speak, we are going through our elections, and so all of that is on chain, and basically we are starting to test the limit of a gigantic experiment to see how we can have the community truly owning funds and being able to disburse funds to jointly work together on achieving this vision of an open web. Again, if you want to have a look at that, I highly encourage you to look at Near Digital Collective. The last part is what we realized in particular through last year, is that it is not enough to actually just let the community or just to offer grants and leave people and wish them good luck. That just doesn't work. And what we realize is actually there is a need for a platform and a place where people can truly exchange knowledge and can actually lean on each other and learn from each other. And that's what we've started building with Near Horizon. So Near Horizon was recently launched, and today has over 242 projects that are listed, but also has over 89 contributors that are basically offering their time, their skills, and even sometimes funding. We see that as a truly on-chain accelerator and incubator, and we participate with we partner actually with some of the largest incubators out in the world to make that vision come to life. Again, here, if you're a project or a builder, highly encourage you to look at that platform. And that's what I have. So the conclusion of my talk is that the current web in which we are doesn't work, because fundamentally the economical model is broken. And so there is an impediment and a need for creating an open web. Creating an open web cannot be done in isolation and requires actually thoughtful strategic impediments and the right underlying technology. And of course, the open web is not going to be solved only by Near. We are a player within that ecosystem. We're thrilled to participate in that, but we highly encourage you to join us into that journey. Thank you.